The chair lays out House Bill 170 and recognizes Representative Bernal to explain his bill. Is there a substitute? I believe there's a substitute, Representative?
Yes, Chair, this is a substitute.
Okay, the chair recognizes Representative Bernal to lay out committee substitute to House Bill 170.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Good to see you this morning. It's nice to talk about something a little different than school finances in my life for most of the session so far. HB 170 seeks to require an issuer of health insurance plan that provides coverage for a screening mammogram to also provide coverage for a diagnostic mammogram. This is my third time filing this bill. I think I can lay it out and explain it to you pretty simply. A lot of insurance plans cover a screening mammogram. But imagine a situation where you go to the doctor, your screening mammogram is covered, and then they find something. So you've got to go to get your diagnostic mammogram, and that's the moment when something might be amiss that you have to pay out of pocket. And that can be daunting for a lot of people. But let me offer you another alternative, which is for some women who have dense breasts, who have a history of breast cancer in their family, who are survivors themselves. Their doctors often elect to start with the diagnostic because the screening mammogram doesn't do anything for them. It doesn't make any difference for them. For the record, a lot of these women happen to be minority women, and so that also means that, as we know, they're clustered in areas where there's not a lot of money. There's not a lot of money to pay, even if you've got insurance, to pay for the out-of-pocket expenses. And so in these instances, the diagnostic mammogram is your first mammogram. And the idea that that wouldn't be covered can have a tremendous effect on them. It could get in the way. And we've seen, and you'll hear, that it has. And so I am not under any illusions that this is not a panacea, that it's not the silver bullet that solves everything. But I think to the extent that we can do better, we can. We've done things like this in the past. I think everyone knows people in their life or themselves have been touched by breast cancer. I lost an aunt, my mom's only sister, to breast cancer. And so this is not unlike some of the things we did last session with cochlear implants or 3D mammography last session. The reason why, just to be clear, the reason why I thought it was still important to bring this even though we did 3D mammography last session is because those machines, one, are very expensive, and there's an access issue. There's just not that many of them around the state for it really to affect the number of people we'd like to affect. A diagnostic mammogram relative to a screening mammogram is essentially same doctor, same place, same machine, more pictures.
That's what I was going to ask. Okay.
I might be explaining it in broad terms, but that essentially is what it is. And at the end of the day, even though some people you may hear will talk about a fiscal impact, just like everything else, prevention is cheaper than treatment. And so you'll hear from a number of witnesses. I'm happy to answer any questions or reserve the right to close, but I appreciate you getting me in early.
Thank you. Dr.
Just
Bonnet.
Quick question.
Sure.
Do you have any idea the frequency or percentage of the time that diagnostic mammogram is not covered? Because I would imagine that would vary from one policy to the next. It doesn't fundamentally change the problem.
No,
but I'm just curious as to.
It's a good question. The best answer I can give you is probably not a good answer, and there might be other people in the room who can answer it for you. Is that the general industry standard is that it's not. Okay. Not like the screening mammogram is. Yeah. I mean, I think that's sort of a safe bet. That doesn't mean that there aren't plans. There might be plans that do cover it, but for the most part, when you're checking, the majority of the time you'll find that the screening mammogram is covered and the diagnostic is not.
And certainly I can ask, another witness, but
Sure.
I guess just
that might be better. But let's try.
Yeah, because I'm going to ask you so they can start thinking.
Sure.
So another question would be: are there potentially scenarios where it becomes a matter of the policy describing medical necessity? In other words, it may be covered under certain circumstances but not on others, depending on the information that's provided when the study is requested.
That very well could be, and I think that as the profile of the people that we're talking about are vastly different, right? So I would imagine that a woman with a history of breast cancer might be viewed differently as a woman who is a survivor and is going for their third or fourth annual, I don't want to use the word checkup, but to get seen again after they've been in remission for a long time versus someone who just has dense breasts. I don't know what the calculus is to determine where each one of those women would fall.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Good question.
Representative Alderson.
Representative, I appreciate you laying this bill out, and I remember we talked about this last session.
We did.
And so as I understand it, these are, in most situations, are women who are already there for a screening mammogram, so they're already there at the facility, and then something might be of concern, and so then this gives them the ability to essentially move directly to the diagnostic mammogram without having to make a second appointment and go home and worry about what was seen and what was found. And
I think it's both. I mean, I would imagine that that's the preferred scenario, but I also know that that sometimes they don't get the results then, that they may get the results later and have to go back. So I agree that I would imagine that's the preferred route. I don't know that to always be the case for it to play out that way.
Okay. And
You might have someone like not able to read the images in real time, just taking them, and then the doctor not being available to read them.
So, and again, just in fairness and trying to understand the effects of this on the insurance marketplace, your bill, if I read it correctly, is designed to carve out, this doesn't apply to Medicaid. Obviously, it can't apply to ERISA-based plans.
Right. So there's language in the code. I think when we did 3D mammography, Chairwoman Thompson sort of memorialized in code the places where it would and wouldn't based on those jurisdictional issues. And in fact, the committee sub also includes that language to make sure the jurisdictional issues are taken care of.
Do you know, does it cover ERS or TRS?
I believe that it does. I know I have that note here, and I may have to come back and tell you, but I have the answer in here, and I don't want to give you a bad answer.
Okay. And then I just want to be sure that you're aware, and I think you are, because I've talked about this before, but just for everybody in the room's benefit, the percentage of plans under the commercial market space that we could actually affect with a bill like this continues to dwindle, and last I saw it was down to about 16% of the marketplace.
I have no doubt that is the case.
And so one of the questions that I have as I'm considering legislation like this is if plans covered under ERISA would not be subject to this regulation and those patients wouldn't receive that protection, even though they might have a card in their wallet that says Blue Cross Blue Shield or United or some other major carrier, and they're thinking they have coverage. To what effect do you think something like this might have to actually shift that balance in favor of ERISA even more? So obviously there might be a premium increase for something like this. And so every time we add a mandate to the commercial market space, it makes it more financially attractive for an employer to basically move out of that marketplace into the ERISA marketplace, where there's a lot less coverage available, including a lot of things that you and I have fought for and worked for in the past.
I don't know if I have the answer to that. I think that's a question for them. I also think there's a question of whether or not doing screenings really is more expensive than treating people who have advanced stage 3, stage 4 cancer.
Completely understand.
You probably have a better answer to that than I do. And as I said at the beginning, I don't have any illusions about what this does and doesn't do, but to the extent it can help people who need it, I'll take it. Just like in the committee where I spend most of my time in public education, I have no illusions that the things we're doing aren't going to solve all the problems, but to the extent that we can help as many kids as we possibly can, I think that's reason enough to do it and to try it. So I think we should go as far as we can, and I'll leave it to you to weigh the balance of whether we're doing more harm than good. But in my own opinion, I don't think that we are.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing this back. I enjoyed this bill last time when we reviewed it, and I appreciate your tenacity, and I think all of the folks that are concerned about this appreciate your effort and not giving up, and bringing it back. So I'm grateful to you for doing that.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have any information on the cost of this diagnostic screening?
So just for what it's worth, there's no fiscal note, and we got that back. But the the range that we've seen has been reported that a diagnostic mammogram can range between about $350 to up to about $850. And I'm sure there are outliers there, but that's what we've consistently seen over and over again.
Okay.
I just,
Yes,
Chairwoman
ma'am.
Davis.
I mean, maybe more of a comment than a question, but it's my experience that even if you have coverage, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to get the procedure. That coverage does not necessitate or does not equal medical necessity, which will be determined by by the insurance company.
I understand.
So this does not address sort of what's happening from a personal experience as a breast cancer survivor.
Yes, ma'am.
That has had diagnostic mammograms denied, even though I have coverage for them. That I just think it's important that we not be under the illusion that this is in fact going to affect whether or not, and quite frankly, it's outside the insurance companies that are making these medical necessity decisions. So I
think there's a lot to do with healthcare in this state. I think there's a lot we could do with healthcare in this state. I think that again, I am not trying to present to you a situation where once we do this, every question, every issue that relates to this particular affliction is solved. I'm just saying that this is what I think we can do now, and at a minimum, because we've done this before, at a minimum, I'm trying to create some parity with this affliction for the ones that we've done in the past. And if it helps a few people, great. If it causes a larger shift where we have to have a larger conversation, which I think we should, about healthcare coverage, great. If it helps force that issue, I'd like that. I'm at a minimum trying to do as much as I think I can, especially given the fact that, as all of you are fully aware and looking at you around the room, I am not a subject matter expert, both in terms of my own studies and in my own experience. I know. That's my point.
Representative.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, you mentioned last time, we did this 3D bill.
Right.
For the 3D.
Yes, sir.
Does that solve the problem that you're talking about here?
No.
This is a totally different type of test.
It's a different type of test. The 3D mammogram it's a great test, but the problem is there's an access issue. Putting aside the points that you guys have raised, just talking about it generally. The issue with the 3D mammogram is that there's not enough. First, the machines are very expensive. Right? You can't get your hands on all of them. And if we're talking about access, to the extent we can have even a theoretical conversation about access, there's just not enough of them to go around. So there's lots of places throughout any given city, or certainly any region of the state, where they're just not available. And so because screening mammograms are very much available, they're not as hard to get, and this is the same doctor, same room, same machine. Right, the access issue is solved to a much greater degree than that. I hope and think that the 3D piece will slowly make its way to every corner of the state. We're not even close to that yet, and I don't mean that to disparage the effort. I'm just saying that the fact of the matter is there's not enough machines to be available and accessible to all the people who need it.
Well, thanks.
Yes, sir.
The medical director making that decision liable vis-a-vis the medical officer.
All right. If there aren't any more questions, I reserve my right to close.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. The chair now calls Eliza May.